Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are opening up a file that I think a lot of us have been subconsciously trying to keep closed. We're talking about the device in your pocket, sure. But more specifically, we're talking about the fact that you probably feel a phantom vibration in your leg right now just because I mentioned it.
It is the universal twitch of the 21st century.
It really is. And look, we have covered tech addiction before. Everyone knows they shouldn't doom scroll at 2 a.m. That's not new. But the stack of research we are looking at today, and it is a heavy stack, it goes so much deeper than just, bad habits.
It does.
We're looking at a fundamental restructuring of the human attention span. We're seeing evidence that we are systematically rewiring our neural pathways to be intolerant of the one thing that actually makes us human: stillness.
It's a really confronting set of data.
Yeah.
We aren't just talking about wasted time anymore. We are talking about a physiological change in how the brain processes a reward, how it handles boredom, and ultimately how it constructs reality.
A physiological change.
Yeah. I mean, when you look at this 2024 perspective paper from Communication Psychology, alongside the clinical logs from, say, Lone Star Neurology, the picture is pretty stark. We are building brains that are chemically dependent on distraction.
And that is the mission for this deep dive. We're not here to lecture you about screen time. We're here to unpack the neuroscience of why you can't sit in an elevator for 30 seconds without checking your email.
Right.
We want to understand why, paradoxically, we seem to be more bored now than we were before the internet even existed. And hopefully, we can find a way to reclaim some autonomy without, moving to a yurt in the wilderness.
Which, while appealing some days, isn't exactly a scalable solution for the modern economy.
Exactly. We need practical leverage, not escapism. But before we get to the solutions, we have to understand the trap. And the hook for me in all of this research was this concept of the boredom paradox.
This is that fascinating work from Tam and Inslicht.
Right. So the intuitive assumption is that the smartphone is the cure for boredom. I'm standing in line, I'm bored, I pull out the phone, and boredom solved. But their data suggests the exact opposite.
It suggests we have the causality completely backward. The research indicates that these devices are not the cure for boredom, they are a primary engine of it.
That is a bold claim. I mean, it feels completely counterintuitive.
It does, but the data is pretty compelling. They looked at these huge longitudinal studies, U.S. adolescents from 2010 to 2017, Chinese college students from 2009 to 2020. We're talking massive sample sizes.
Okay.
And in both of those groups, reported levels of boredom have risen significantly. And that rise correlates almost perfectly with the market saturation of the smartphone.
So wait. We have access to the sum of human knowledge, every movie ever made, and infinite entertainment in our pockets. And we are more bored than a kid in 1995 staring at a wall.
We are. And to understand why, we have to dismantle the mechanism of what some neuroscientists call the infovore.
Let's get into that. Because infovore sounds like a creature from a sci-fi novel, but you're saying that's actually us.
It is us. It is the evolutionary description of the human species. For the vast, vast majority of our history, we're talking 99% of our time on Earth information was a survival resource. It was scarce, and it was incredibly high stakes.
Right. If you're a hunter-gatherer, knowing where the water is, or noticing a new pattern of animal tracks, or spotting a predator, that isn't just news. That is literally life or death.
Exactly. So natural selection favored the curious. The brain evolved this intricate reward system to incentivize the acquisition of information. When you learn something new and important about your environment, your brain gave you a little chemical cookie. Dopamine. But here is where most people, and honestly most pop psychology articles, get it wrong. We tend to think of dopamine as the pleasure molecule. You eat the chocolate, you get the dopamine, you feel good. Simple.
Yeah, that's the common narrative, right? I need my dopamine hit.
But neuroscience tells us that is technically incorrect. Dopamine is not the chemical of liking. It is the chemical of wanting. It is the driver of seeking, of anticipation and motivation. It's the fuel that gets you to hunt the buffalo, not the feeling of eating the steak.
So it's the itch, not the scratch.
Precisely. It is the tension that propels you forward. And this is so crucial because the modern smartphone has co-opted this ancient foraging mechanism. It has hijacked it. When you see a red notification badge or you hear that specific ping, your brain doesn't see a digital icon. The ancient parts of your brain see a survival cue.
It mimics the discovery of a resource, like finding a new patch of berries.
It mimics a change in the environment. It screams, pay attention, something new has happened. And it triggers the mesolimbic pathway, the core reward system, telling you that there is valuable information just one tap away.
So when I feel that urge to check LinkedIn, even though I know it's just going to be someone bragging about a promotion, that's my inner hunter-gatherer thinking he's found a berry bush.
Or thinking he's heard a twig snap in the tall grass. It's a survival override. But the attention economy report we reviewed goes even deeper than just the cue. It talks about the schedule of the reward. This is where we get into B.F. Skinner and the power of variable reward.
It's a slot machine effect. I found this part fascinating because it explains the compulsion, why it feels impossible to stop.
It explains why you can't stop. So, Skinner found that if you give a pigeon a food pellet every single time it pecks a lever, the pigeon relaxes. It pecks when it's hungry. The world is predictable.
And predictability kills the dopamine spike.
Exactly. If the reward is guaranteed, the brain doesn't need to be hyper alert. But, and this is the key, if you introduce reward uncertainty, so sometimes the pigeon gets a pellet, sometimes it gets nothing, sometimes it gets a jackpot of 10 pellets, the pigeon goes manic. It pecks incessantly.
Because its brain is trying to solve the pattern.
The brain is a prediction engine. It hates uncertainty. So when there is a prediction error, when the outcome doesn't match the expectation, or when the outcome is totally unknown, dopamine spikes to its absolute maximum. It's trying to force the organism to figure out the system.
And that is the pull-to-refresh mechanism on my email or social media feed.
That is the timeline. That is the email inbox. Every time you scroll, you are pulling the lever on a slot machine. You don't know what you're going to get. Is it a boring work email? That's no reward. Is it nothing? No reward. Or is it a hilarious meme, a text from a crush, or a breaking news story? Jackpot.
And the fact that most of it is garbage actually helps the addiction. That seems so backwards.
It's completely counterintuitive, but yes. If every email was fascinating, you would actually get bored of checking. It is the possibility of the jackpot hidden somewhere in that sea of garbage that keeps the dopamine system firing on all cylinders. You aren't scrolling for the content, you are scrolling for the uncertainty.
That is a huge distinction. We aren't addicted to the news. We are addicted to the mechanic of finding it.
We are foraging in a digital forest that is engineered to never let us feel full. And this constant state of seeking has real physiological consequences for the brain structure itself. We saw this in the analysis from Samfire Neuroscience regarding the basal ganglia.
This is the shift from goal-directed behavior to habit formation.
Right. So initially, checking your phone is a conscious choice. You think, I wonder what the weather is today. That is a top-down decision made by the prefrontal cortex, the CEO of the brain. It involves executive function.
I have a goal. I execute the action to meet it. Simple.
But as you repeat this loop cue, action, variable reward thousands and thousands of times, the brain tries to be efficient. It says, okay, we do this all the time. Let's automate it. It offloads the process to the basal ganglia,
The lizard brain.
the habit center. This is the part of the brain that lets you drive a car without actively thinking about where your feet are. It just handles automatic procedural loops.
And this is what you call zombie mode.
This is exactly why you find yourself holding your unlocked phone, and you have absolutely no memory of taking it out of your pocket or even why you did it. The CEO was looking out the window, and the lizard brain simply executed the script it has run 10,000 times before.
The scary part there is the lack of consent.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't choose to check the phone. My body just did it for me.
That is the literal definition of a habit loop. And this is why the common advice of just use willpower is so ineffective, it's almost useless. Willpower is a resource of the prefrontal cortex.
The CEO.
Right, but the addiction is living in the basal ganglia. You are trying to use a logic filter to stop a deeply ingrained reflex. By the time you realize you're scrolling, the loop has already been running for 5 minutes.
So we're fighting a subterranean battle against our own brain's automation. But I want to circle back to the boredom piece, because this is where it gets weird. If my lizard brain is constantly being stimulated by this slot machine, why did that Tam and Inslicht paper say we are getting more bored? You'd think we'd be overstimulated, not understimulated.
We are overstimulated, but we are underengaged, and that is the heart of the paradox. The researchers coined a term for this specific behavior: digital switching.
This is the rapid-fire swiping, the TikTok scroll.
It's the behavior of skipping through content. You watch 3 seconds of a video, it doesn't immediately grab you with a massive dopamine hit, so you swipe. You read the headline of an article, you don't read the article itself, you just click the next link. The study showed that this specific behavior, this constant switching, actually intensifies the feeling of boredom.
Why? Why would that be?
Because satisfaction comes from immersion. It comes from depth. It comes from what psychologists call a flow state, when you sink into a narrative or a problem and you completely lose track of time. Digital switching trains the brain for shallow processing. You are just skimming the surface of 1,000 things but engaging deeply with nothing.
It's the cognitive equivalent of eating infinite samples at a grocery store, but never actually eating a meal. You're chewing constantly, but you're starving.
That is a perfect analogy. And this creates what they call an attentional gap. You are swiping because you crave high engagement, but the very act of swiping prevents you from ever finding it. So you just feel restless, empty, and yes, bored.
And I imagine this just wreaks havoc on our patients for anything that isn't a 15-second high-octane clip.
That is the boredom intolerance they mentioned in the report. We are raising our threshold for stimulation. If your brain is conditioned to the hyper-edited jump cut pace of TikTok or YouTube Shorts, where there is a visual cut every 2 seconds and a dopamine spike every 10, then real life feels agonizingly slow.
A conversation with a friend has pauses. A movie has a slow build-up. Reading a book requires you to actually visualize the images yourself.
And to a brain that's been trained on high-speed switching, those natural pauses feel like system errors. They feel like lag. We become intolerant of the pacing of reality.
That's profound. We're breaking our ability to exist in real time.
And we are also suffering from what the research calls opportunity cost. This is another layer. The phone acts as a constant nagging reminder of something better.
The infinite alternative.
Right. When you are doing a boring task, say writing a report, or even something pleasant like watching a sunset, the phone in your pocket represents infinite potential entertainment. Your brain subconsciously compares the specific, singular reality in front of you with the infinite possibility in your pocket.
And reality almost always loses that comparison, doesn't it?
Reality is just one thing. The internet is everything. So the current moment is devalued. You are physically present, but your attention is split. You are mentally halfway out the door, just waiting for the better option to appear.
Which brings us to the physical consequences. This is where it gets really serious. We've talked about the psychology, but the sources from Lone Star Neurology and Ben Carrotin suggest we are looking at actual hardware changes in the brain. This is neuroplasticity in action.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The brain is plastic. It physically rewires itself based on what you do. It's not a metaphor. If you juggle every day, the part of your brain that handles hand-eye coordination gets denser, it grows. So if you practice distraction every day, if you practice switching focus every 15 seconds, your brain physically adapts to become better at being distracted.
So we are literally training ourselves to be scatterbrained.
We are. And in the brain scans, this shows up as a kind of tale of two regions. We see significant changes in the prefrontal cortex, or PFC, and the amygdala.
The brakes and the alarm.
Exactly. The PFC is the brake system. It handles impulse control, emotional regulation, long-term planning. It's the adult in the room. The research shows that chronic heavy internet users often show reduced gray matter density and reduced functional connectivity in the PFC.
So our brakes are wearing thin, literally.
We're losing the physical capacity to say no to an impulse. At the very same time, the amygdala, the threat detection center, the alarm system tends to become hyperactive.
Okay, why does the amygdala get bigger or more active?
Because of the nature of the attention economy. It doesn't run on calm, reasoned thought. It runs on high arousal content. Outrage, fear, breaking news, social comparison, envy. These things are rocket fuel for engagement because they trigger the amygdala. If you are constantly flooding your system with high stress or high excitement input, the amygdala stays in a state of chronic activation. It gets a workout.
So we have a louder alarm screaming, click this, look at this, and a weaker brake system trying to say, don't do it, focus.
That is the double whammy they describe. You feel more anxiety, more FOMO, more twitchiness. That's the overactive amygdala. And you have less executive control to manage those feelings. That's the weakened PFC.
This explains the cognitive fatigue we all feel. I mean, it's bone deep sometimes. The Gurkha Technology Report had a statistic that really stayed with me. The one about context switching.
The hidden cost of interruption.
It takes an average of 23 minutes to regain deep focus after a digital interruption. Is that real?
23 minutes and 15 seconds, to be precise, according to that study. That is the time required for your brain to reload the cognitive context of the complex task you were doing.
So if I'm in the middle of writing a complex email and I stop for just 30 seconds to check a text message?
You haven't just lost 30 seconds. You have shattered your focus. Your brain has to dump the entire context of the email, load the context of the text message, process it, formulate a reply, and then try to reconstruct the entire mental model of the email from scratch. Psychologists call this attentional residue.
Meaning a part of your brain is still stuck on the text message.
Exactly. Even when you're back to the email, a slice of your cognitive bandwidth is still thinking about that text. You are working with diminished capacity. And if you are checking your phone every 10 or 15 minutes, which is average for many people, you are mathematically never in a state of deep focus. Your entire day is spent in the recovery phase of the interruption cycle.
That explains so much. It explains why I can sit at my desk for 8 solid hours, feel incredibly busy, and then leave at the end of the day feeling like I accomplished absolutely nothing of substance.
It's the feeling of running on a treadmill. It's high energy expenditure, but zero forward motion. You are burning your brain's glucose to switch contexts, not to solve problems.
And what about memory? I feel like my memory is Swiss cheese these days. I assume it's just age, but the research points a finger at the infinite scroll.
It's an input-output problem. The hippocampus, which is critical for memory formation, is the bottleneck. To move information from your short-term working memory into long-term storage, the brain needs a process called consolidation.
And consolidation happens when you're sleeping.
It happens during sleep, yes, but it also happens during downtime. It happens when you pause, when you just zone out for a minute while waiting for the bus. But if you fill every single spare second with new input, if you scroll Twitter while you walk to the bathroom or check headlines while the coffee brews, you are denying the hippocampus the quiet time it needs to save the data.
It's like trying to download a huge file, but you keep canceling the download every 5 seconds to start a new one.
Or trying to pour water into a glass that is already overflowing. The new information just pushes the old information out before it can set. We're consuming terabytes of content, but we are retaining almost none of it. We are drowning in information, but starving for knowledge.
This brings us to the segment of the research that I found the most haunting. We've talked about productivity and boredom, but there is a deeper layer here, the war on stillness. We are losing the ability to simply be. And this isn't just about relaxing. This is about something called the default mode network.
The DMN. This is one of the most important discoveries in modern neuroscience. For a long, long time, we thought the brain just went to sleep when we weren't doing a specific task. But we were completely wrong. When you stop focusing on the outside world, when you daydream or stare out a window, this massive neural network, the DMN, lights up like a Christmas tree.
It's the brain's background operating system.
You could call it the incubator. The DMN is responsible for mental time travel, thinking about the past and planning for the future. It handles self-reflection, it handles empathy, trying to understand other people's minds, and crucially, it is the engine of creativity.
This is why you get your best ideas in the shower.
Exactly. Why the shower? Why the long drive home? Because those are undemanding tasks. They occupy your hands, but they leave your mind free to wander. The executive network powers down, and the default mode network spins up. It starts connecting disparate ideas, a dot you collected 3 days ago, with a problem you're trying to solve today.
It's synthesis. It's where the magic happens.
It is, but here's the problem. Scrolling on your phone is not an undemanding task.
We think it is, though. We tell ourselves, I'm just relaxing, just chilling out.
But neurologically, you are not. Scrolling is what the research calls hard fascination. It requires directed visual attention. It forces the brain to process text, images, video, and social cues constantly. It actively inhibits the DMN.
So if I take my phone into the shower, which, let's be honest, people do with waterproof cases now, or if I listen to a podcast while I walk the dog.
You are colonizing your own downtime. You are suppressing the DMN. You are just collecting more and more dots, but you are never giving your brain the silence it needs to connect them.
We are killing the aha moments before they're even born.
We are, and we are exhausting ourselves in the process. The research makes this important distinction between hard fascination, screens, busy city streets, intense focus, and soft fascination, looking at nature, a fire, clouds.
Attention restoration theory.
Right. Soft fascination engages the mind gently, in a way that allows the directed attention mechanism to recharge. Hard fascination drains it. So when you take a break from your work on a computer to scroll Instagram on your phone, you are just switching from one form of hard fascination to another. You aren't resting, you are just changing the channel of your exhaustion.
But there is a darker reason we avoid this silence, isn't there? The outline mentions a taxonomy of silence and this aversion to self-confrontation. This part really hit home for me.
This is the heavy stuff, for sure. Why are we so terrified of 5 minutes of doing nothing? I think it was Blaise Pascal who famously said, all of humanity's problems stem from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone.
And you didn't even have an iPhone to contend with.
Exactly. The phone is the ultimate pacifier for existential anxiety. Silence is a mirror. When the external noise stops, the internal monologue starts.
And that monologue isn't always polite, is it?
It asks the hard questions. Am I happy in this job? Why do I feel so lonely? What am I actually doing with my life? These are uncomfortable thoughts. They require real emotional work.
And the phone offers an immediate eject button from all of that.
It's an anesthetic. Oh, I feel a negative emotion coming on. Quick, distract me. We use the phone to numb the inherent discomfort of being a conscious human being. But the cost is that we lose emotional granularity. We lose the ability to process and understand our own feelings because we abort the process the second it starts.
We are trading insight for distraction. We're basically narcotizing our own lives with data.
And that erosion of self-connection eventually leads to an erosion of empathy. Empathy requires imagination. It requires slowing down enough to simulate the experience of another person in your own mind. If your brain is wired for 15-second bursts of self-gratification, deep empathy becomes biologically very, very difficult.
Okay, so we have diagnosed the problem, and it is significant. We are dopamine-addicted foragers with atrophied prefrontal cortices, actively suppressing our own creativity and hiding from our own emotions.
It is a grim diagnosis, I'll admit, but an accurate one based on the sources.
So how do we fix it? And knowing what we know about the lizard brain and the zombie mode, please do not tell me the solution is just try harder.
No, absolutely not. Trying to use willpower against a supercomputer that has been specifically designed by teams of PhDs to hack your brainstem is a losing battle. We need environmental design.
Change the environment, not the person.
Exactly. We need to create an ecosystem where the right choice is the easier choice. The sources suggest a few really practical, tactical interventions. The first one is purely visual. Grayscale mode.
Turning the screen black and white.
It sounds so trivial, but it strikes at the very heart of the infovore hijack. The bright red notification badges, the saturated blue of hyperlinks, the hyper-real colors of Instagram food photos, these are what are known as supernormal stimuli. They are visual candy.
They scream, "Eat me,"
Yeah.
to the primate part of our brain.
Absolutely. When you toggle your phone to grayscale, and it's in the accessibility settings of almost every phone, you strip away the sugar, the phone becomes a tool again, not a toy. It becomes boring.
I've tried this, and it is shocking how unappealing Instagram becomes. You look at it and you realize, I'm just looking at gray photos of strangers' lunches. The magic just evaporates.
It breaks the emotional loop. The second tactic is friction. We need to reverse the path of least resistance. Right now, the phone is the easiest thing to access in our lives. We need to make it harder.
The idea of no phone zones.
Specifically, the bedroom. This is non-negotiable in the literature. If your phone is the last thing you see at night and the first thing you see in the morning, you are guaranteeing that you operate in a reactive, high-anxiety state all day.
So go out and buy a physical alarm clock.
A $10 investment that saves your brain. If you have to physically get out of bed and walk to another room to check your phone first thing in the morning, you have broken the zombie loop. You have forced the prefrontal cortex to wake up and make a conscious decision.
I also really like the wait rule that was mentioned in the Samphire source, the 5-minute rule.
This is about surfing the urge. Dopamine cravings are like waves. They spike rapidly, they scream for attention, and then if you don't feed them, they crash.
So when I feel that twitch, that urge to check, I tell myself, okay, I can check, but I just have to wait 5 minutes.
Exactly. You aren't saying no, which can trigger a rebellion in your brain. You are just saying not yet. What you find is that usually within 3 minutes, the chemical pressure dissipates. You realize you didn't actually need to check, you just had a neurological itch that passed.
And finally, the hardest part, retraining boredom tolerance.
This is the physical therapy for your attention span. You have to deliberately practice undemanding tasks without any audio or visual accompaniment.
Walking without the podcast. Folding laundry without the TV on in the background.
Driving in silence. It will feel painful at first. It will feel like withdrawal. Your brain will scream at you, "Where is the stimulation? Something is wrong."
It feels like withdrawal because it is withdrawal.
It is. But if you can push through that initial discomfort, you start to reactivate the default mode network. You lower your dopamine baseline back to a healthy level.
And the flavor comes back to real life.
Exactly. Suddenly, simply looking at the trees during a walk becomes interesting again. A conversation becomes engaging again. You restore your capacity for soft fascination.
And there was a crucial point about reframing the feeling of boredom itself, not seeing it as a failure, but as a signal.
Yes. This is so important. We tend to treat boredom as a defect. I'm bored, I need to fix it. But evolutionary psychologists argue that boredom is a regulatory signal. It is
Right.
a dashboard light in your car. It is telling you, hey, what you are doing right now lacks meaning or engagement.
So when I feel bored, instead of immediately numbing it with a scroll, I should stop and ask, what is this feeling trying to tell me?
Exactly. If you numb the boredom, you stay in the meaningless situation. But if you listen to it, it might prompt you to do something actually valuable. Call a friend you miss, fix that broken thing in the house, write in a journal. Boredom is the drive toward meaning. If you kill the boredom, you kill the drive.
That is a complete paradigm shift. Boredom isn't the enemy, it's the messenger.
It is the messenger. And by shooting the messenger with a quick dopamine hit from our phones, we ensure we never actually get the message.
We have covered a massive amount of ground today, from the berry-picking biology of our ancestors all the way to the grayscale settings on the modern smartphone. We've looked at how we are physically shrinking our brakes and boosting our alarms, and how we are paradoxically making ourselves more bored by frantically trying to be entertained.
It is a sobering picture, but I think it's a hopeful one. The brain is plastic. It can be rewired in both directions. None of this is permanent.
Right. The goal isn't to be a Luddite. We're not smashing our phones with a hammer.
No, not at all. The goal is attentional autonomy. It is the freedom to choose where your attention goes, rather than having it harvested by a corporation or hijacked by your own lizard brain. It's about being the pilot of your own mind, not just the cargo.
Attentional autonomy. I love that. It
Yeah,
really feels like the ultimate freedom in the modern age.
I think it is.
I want to leave everyone with a final thought, something to chew on while you hopefully take a walk without your phone after this. We talked a lot about neuroplasticity, this idea that the brain physically changes based on what we do.
The brain is always building itself moment to moment.
So ask yourself this. If your brain is a house that is being built brick by brick, every single day, by your habits, what kind of house are you building? Are you building a house with paper-thin walls and constant fire alarms? A house designed for anxiety and reaction? Or are you building a house with deep foundations and quiet rooms? A house designed for insight and connection?
That is the question.
The next time the room goes quiet and your hand twitches toward your pocket, just stop, take a breath, and ask yourself, what is this silence trying to tell me?
And then just listen.
Thanks for diving deep with us. We will see you next time.